Hi, so I'm a teacher. That has never been in question. My earliest memory is when I was about 5 years old. I remember me and my two brothers getting into my dad's black Caprice Classic, and we drove to the high school where he worked. I can remember he pulled out what seemed like 100 keys. They were magical. And he slid one into a lock, and he would pull open this thick metal gate. I can still hear the screeching. And he gave my brothers and I access to a school that had a planetarium, a swimming pool where I almost drowned, and a gymnasium where we would play tag for hours. As a kid, you don't realize the hard work that goes behind the scenes of a teacher. I just thought it was cool that he provided for us by playing with kids all day. Fast forward to high school, and I was a 3-star athlete who received multiple scholarship opportunities. The admission process was easy. I knew what I wanted to be. 5.5 years later, don't judge me, I graduated with a degree in math education. 25 years of teaching has taught me what that university never did. No professor told me that I would minimize my own portion at dinner so I could take food in for students the next day who are hungry. No one told me that as a single mother with 2 children, I would take $10,000 annually out of my pocket. I would buy pencils because that's a stupid thing to argue about. I would buy clothing. Every one of my students gets 4 t-shirts and a hoodie because if they don't represent me, they're going to stand for something else that isn't as positive. And in my own philosophy, I say, if we don't support them now, we're going to all pay for them later. I never realized that my own children would be asked to give up their coats and their shoes that they didn't wear on a daily basis so I could take it into students that I loved. I didn't know in any final exam or midterm, no one ever asked me what I would do when bullets flew at and into kids that I loved. I wasn't prepared for the fact as an inner city educator that I would attend life-saving surgeries, funerals, and hand diplomas to first-generation graduates. So what happened on April 22nd, 2015 took even me by surprise. I was at home with my 2 children. My daughter was becoming a teenager, and she had an iPhone wrapped on the kitchen table. Her younger brother, of course, wanted me to give it to her immediately. And so as I sat at my kitchen table with my 2 children on a rainy April morning, kind of like today, bullets across town changed someone else's life. See, one of my students asked her mom to take her to school so she wouldn't get wet. And a masked gunman ended that mother's life while my student sat next to her in the passenger seat. My daughter and this child had 2 totally separate worlds. I was the only one that was in both of them. So immediately I had to educate myself on trauma-informed care, restorative justice, and self-regulation. I studied everything that no one ever taught me because I fell in love with my first student 24 years ago. And what I found is there's something called the ACEs survey, and it stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey. And what it does is it predicts what your future is like as an adult based on 10 things that can happen to you as a child. They're all traumatic events. They begin with something as easy as divorce, and they end up somewhere else asking a question about sexual offenders, about if someone in your family is incarcerated, if someone in your family has an addiction, or if you've ever watched an immediate family member die. And what I found when I studied that is that 33% of Americans have an ACE score of 0 out of 10. And still the future of their mental and physical health is determined by 1 in 16 will smoke. The odds continue in their favor. 1 in 69 are alcoholics. 1 in 480 use IV drugs. 1 in 14 has heart disease. And only 1 in 96 will attempt suicide. As I continued to study this, I found out that 51% of Americans have a score between 1 and 3. And as I went through that data, you can see up here that 1 in 9 will smoke, and now 1 in 9 are alcoholics. And 1 in 43 will use IV drugs. 1 in 43 have heart disease. And 1 in 10 will attempt to take their own life. The chart continues, unfortunately. 16% have a score between 4 and 8. And what that means is that 1 in 6 will smoke. 1 in 6 are alcoholics. 1 in 30 use IV drugs. 1 in 6 will develop heart disease. And 1 in 5 will attempt suicide. Those are numbers that my math brain has a hard time with, qualitatively. My students, 100 students at 2 separate schools. I have 75 at Walnut Ridge High School and 25 students now at Linden. We started with 20 of them in 2015 when I knew I had to do something different. And so this is where I can't understand it and I can't accept it. If those are the numbers, my students' average score is a 6.5. That means 16 of my kids will smoke. I honestly am okay with that. 16 kids that I hug on a daily basis will become alcoholics. 3 of the students that greet me every day when I walk in by my door will be IV drug users. 16 will develop heart disease. And 20 of the kids that I have fallen in love with will attempt to take their own life. I don't know what to do with this. And so in my research, I've had to, again, talk about restorative justice and trauma-informed care and self-regulation. And what I found is there are 5 things that I can do with these students that aren't even my own children to try to change their lives, to try to reverse those odds, because I refuse to believe that 20 kids that I know them intimately will attempt to take their own life. The first thing is allow yourself to get close to people. We call ourselves the second family. We hug, we handshake, we high five. I've created a classroom that is safe. I create a classroom where the rules are everything stays in-house and there's no judging. I've created an environment, if you walk in, you wouldn't even notice the traumas, because many of my kids come with the 7-piece luggage set in their life every day. Sometimes they carry them all, sometimes there's only one. And so we become this second family. We do restorative justice circles and double circles, and that just looks like a circle, and you're inside and you're facing out and you're outside and you're matched up with someone. And in 15 seconds, I will give you a prompt. And you're supposed to answer an intimate question with the person standing across from you. And then we rotate and we become to know each other. The worst thing ever is for me as a teacher to pass back a paper and say, please give this to Deshante, and they say, who? And I can't imagine how that makes Deshante feel. And so I want every kid to know every child, and we become this second family. The second thing we can do is learn to take care of yourself physically and emotionally and mentally. And so I've developed 2 very powerful relationships. I reached out to Ohio State School of Nursing. They come the first Monday of the month, and they go through mental health activities with my kids. They go through things simple as hand washing and the amount of sugar in the foods that they're picking up at the corner store. We also have developed a relationship with the Teen Health Clinic. They're located downtown in the major health center, and our kids have a hard time getting there. Once the person came in and started talking about the services they offer to my students, we had so many appointments, they set up a satellite clinic at the recreation center behind my building so it could eliminate the travel. The next thing is get honest about recognizing your defense mechanisms. Our motto that we live by is if you don't heal from what has hurt you, you'll bleed on those that never cut you. And so first we have to figure out what has hurt us and then how we're treating other people. And so I ask that they shake hands with every single person they see in our room, whether it's a stranger or a friend, every time they enter. I ask that they go to the Ronald McDonald House every single holiday and we decorate the dining room. We've won the Liberator Award because we've labeled 5,000 bars of soap for the saving our adolescents from prostitution. And we put bars of soap at the Super Bowl and 70 lives were saved. Now, other people labeled soap too. But my kids need to believe it was their soap that saved those lives. I try to figure out what has affected my kids, homelessness. So we made 50 blankets for the Huckleberry House and for the homeless shelter the Van Buren Homeless Shelter. We just made chemo kits because my kids lose family members to cancer, and we made chemo kits with chapstick and lotion and hand sanitizer and water and blankets. We've made blankets for the flight that the veterans take, the honor flight to go to D.C., because they defended all of our lives. The next thing is act as if you aren't afraid. One of the activities I try to do every year, which is very costly, but I try to take the kids ziplining. It's an environment they've never been, but I want them to see that they can face their fears and they can do things they never thought they could do as long as it's not a calculated risk. The last thing is allow yourself to extend to others and be supported. Again, I put them in situations where they meet other people on a regular basis. I bring in people that have been incarcerated, and they sit and they tell their story because I hope that my boys won't follow that path. I bring in teen moms who now have made it out of the system and let them know that that shouldn't stop them from their education. We try to use these 5 things to bond as a family to reverse the odds because, again, 20 students taking their own life is not acceptable to me, not even as a math teacher. My short-term goals are simple. Provide them with the tools to experience success. We have a mock interview fair. And we have 25 businesses that come in and do a 30-minute mock interview, and then they give them feedback. There's no jobs that they're trying to get. But then when they really interview for that first job, I want them to nail it. We talk about standing up straight and looking someone in the eye and shaking their hand because people never forget a handshake. I want to create a safe place. I want the students to walk in my room and to be able to share anything. One of the students that you're looking at up there was laying a year and a half ago in Livingston with a bullet inside of him. I got to go to Grant Hospital and be at his 7-hour life-saving surgery. Now he's like a puppy. I can't even step backwards without him being right behind me. He asked me just last week, Ms. Heideman, when I graduate next year, are you going to leave me? And I said, no, it's like a sorority or fraternity. Once you're in a family and once you're in love with someone, it lasts forever. I want to love them like they are my own. And a lot of people don't get that. They don't wrap their heads around, if a teacher falls in love with a student, it has to be inappropriate. But it's not. I love these kids. I worry about them after school. And by the way, I have 2 kids of my own that are fabulous because they share their mother with 100 kids that don't look anything like them. I want to become a second family because, again, I think if you belong to something, it replaces what else you could belong to. Our long-term goals are threefold. Improve ourselves. Education, graduation, how we treat other people. A kid just said the other day that hate is never up close. And so I really try to get them in different situations with lots of people. Improve the lives of those around us, family, friends, and strangers alike. I want them to get up on the bus and give their seat for someone. I want them to help someone across the street. I want them to help someone in the grocery store because the reality is they're living amongst all of us. They're working at the same places that you go to. They're eating at the same restaurants. And 3, I want to be the initial force that begins an everlasting ripple. We have that airbrushed on the back of my classroom. One small rock can create a ripple that lasts for miles. We develop healthy, trusting relationships. We cross all ethnic, sexual identity, race, and age boundaries. If the world was more like this classroom, it would all be a better place. We don't worry about sameness or relations, only support and relationships. There we are at the Ronald McDonald House. It's so awesome. We go there. They love to take that picture. What I'm going to challenge each of you today is to be the one. We all find things, and we look at something, and we see a problem, and we know we should be helping. We see an opening for us to make a difference in someone's life, and I don't think we can change the world. I certainly can't change the world. That seems too daunting. But I can change someone's world. And so what I do is I challenge each of you today to change someone's world. Make that commitment. Find what environment you can help. And it's not the same environment as I'm in. It can be at a hospital. It can be in your neighborhood. It could just be the neighbor across the street. Make that commitment. Tell them that you'll help. And then most of all, hashtag show up. Thank you.